minutes.
Good evening. At this time, I want to call our December 1st Planning Commission, and Zoning Commission meeting to order. And if you will, at this time, if you'll stand, we'll have a word of prayer and our Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, we're thankful to you for this day, for the blessings we've each enjoyed. We thank you for this great county we live in. And Father, for the opportunity that we have as a Planning Commission to serve. I thank you for each one of these men and women that are serving here. We thank you for our county staff that have prepared for this meeting tonight. We thank you for our first responders, for our county officials, for all those that make this a great place to live. Now, Father, we pray that all that we do tonight honors you, will show respect to each other. We pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll call our roll. Brandon Bias, Robert Davis, here. Plummer Tonsmeyer, here. Jason Padgett, Michael Mullick, here. Greg Seibert, here. Bill Booyer, here. Jamie Stratiger, here. Mike McKenzie, Rebecca Teal, here. Diane Burnett, and Michael Fletcher. And I want to, at this time, also welcome one of our newest members. Diane Burnett is also a new member. She is not here tonight with, I think, under the weather, but Michael Fletcher is with District 35, our newest district. Michael, we're glad to have you on board with us. All right, you have received a copy of the minutes from our last meeting and from the last work session meeting, November 3rd. If there are no corrections, and if you do have some, please say so, but if not, I'll entertain a motion that those be approved.
I'll make a motion that we approve the work session minutes and the minutes of the November meeting.
Okay, Michael Mullick's made a motion these be approved. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Greg, second the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. All right, at this point, we're about to move into our public hearings. Let me just briefly say a couple of things. Hopefully you stopped out front and you signed up. At the appropriate time, I will call each case. We'll open the public hearing for each case, and at that time, our staff will give a report on it. We'll have opportunity as a planning commission to ask questions of them. Then we'll call up the applicant, and we'll have a discussion with them. And then at that point, we will call on you. If you've signed up, I have that here, that you've signed up. I'll call on you. You'll have to come. Well, we're changing things tonight. You, the public, will come to this podium to speak, and that way our staff can be over here working the slides if they need to. But you will come to the podium, give us your name and address. We would ask that you try to restrict your comments to within three minutes, and then we'll try to get answers to your questions. And then at some point, I will close the public hearing. And when I do that, that means that opportunity for you to speak then ends on that item. So, and then we will have discussions between us and the staff, and we will make a final decision and then go to the next item. If you have cell phones, as everywhere else, we just ask that you mute those so that we not be distracted by that. So with that, we will go to our first item. We're going to open our public hearing on case number Z22-18. This is the Davis property. Oh, thank you. So does anyone need to declare any prior communication on this item? Now it's your turn.
All right. This is a request to rezone 4.1 acres. The subject property is located in the Bell Forest area. It is in Planning District 15. There are two parcels. One is zoned RSFE, single family, and the other one is zoned B1, professional business district. The property is located on the east side of State Highway 181 and south of County Road 64. Current use is residential, and it consists of 4 acres. The applicant is asking that it be rezoned to B2 Neighborhood Business District. in order for business offices and storage units. As you can see from the locator map, there is quite a bit of commercial in the area, especially at the intersection of 64 and 181. To the east and south of the subject property, it is zoned RSFE. In the top left-hand corner is the subject property, and the other pictures are of adjacent properties. This is the current zoning requirements for RSFE and B1, and then the proposed zoning requirements for B2. Is the requested change compatible with existing development pattern and the zoning of nearby properties? Zoning usually encourages a transition from more intense uses to less intense. And as you looked at the zoning map at the intersection of 64 and 81, it had more intense commercial zoning. And then going to B2 to B1 to residential is less intense, and that is what the zoning usually tries to encourage. As you can see from the zoning map, the transition, you have the B4, B3 at the intersections, and then it goes out to B1 and B2, and then residential. There is also some commercial further east, which is zone B3. We had some comments back from different agencies. We did receive a comment back from the city of Daphne. They were fine with the commercial zoning, but they just advocate for having buffers around the subject property to protect the residential areas. And staff recommends approval. If the property is rezoned, the applicant will have to come back for a commission site plan, and then that's when we will review the buffers, the landscape buffers, and setbacks and the drainage. So as staff said a minute ago, we recommend approval and have no issues with this rezoning request.
Okay. See, anyone on the Planning Commission have any questions for staff? Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I have no one signed up. Is there anyone that failed to sign up that would like to speak on this? Okay. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Anybody on the Planning Commission have any questions or comments? If not, entertain a motion.
I make a motion we rezone the property from RSFE to B1 to B2.
Okay. Robert Davis made a motion to approve the request. Have a second?
Second.
Was that Bill? Mm-hmm. Bill seconded the motion. Any questions or comments?
Question, we're rezoning to, our request is to rezone to
B2.
To B2.
Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carried.
And I think it'd be important just to note that when we're doing rezoning, that's a recommendation to the county commission, and so there'll be another hearing before the county commission on this rezoning application. So for the first round, if it's rezoning, we're the first step of a two-step process.
So this is a recommendation to the county commission. All right, we'll open the public hearing now for case number Z22-20, May property. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Okay. Ms. Rhodes.
Right. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm pleased to present a rezone request for May property. This is case Z2220. As you can see here, it's located in Planning District 33. All right, the request before the Planning Commission is to rezone 1.82 acres from B2 to B4. The subject property is located south of US Highway 98 and County Road 99 in Lillian. The current use is commercial. The applicant is May Brothers Enterprises, and the owner is Alfred May. The applicant's request is the owner would like the subject property to be rezoned to major commercial in order to sell vehicles and portable buildings such as sheds onto the property. You can see on the locator map that the subject property is surrounded by B2 zoning, and the aerial imagery there on the right, you can see the adjacent land use is vacant to the north and south and commercial to the west. These are the property images, the subject property, and then the properties across the street. These are the current zoning requirements for B2 zoning and the proposed requirements for B4. Is the requested change compatible with the existing development pattern and the zoning of nearby properties? So as seen earlier, the subject property is zoned B2. The surrounding parcels in the area are also zoned B2 with commercial and vacant uses. Staff feels that this change is not compatible with the adjacent properties. In terms of zoning for Planning District 33 was established in August of 2002. The subject property was zoned B2 at this time. However, there have been rezonings in the area since it was established. There's property a quarter of a mile north of the subject property that was rezoned from B2 to B4 in 2006 for automobile sales. It's now currently used for RV sales. There's also adjacent properties to the west and south that have been rezoned from B2 to B3 in August of this year and in December of 2019 to sell used automobiles and operate as a tire shop respectively. A future land use designation of commercial has been provided for the subject property, and approval of this rezoning would result in no change to the land use map. So as seen in the earlier images, the subject property is located at a major intersection, County Road 99 and US Highway 98. The functional classification of US Highway 98 is principal arterial, and County Road 99 is classified as a major collector. So traffic going to and from the subject property, if it is a proposed auto sales or portable buildings business, could have an impact on the traffic patterns and increase congestion in the area. So access to this site from US Highway 98 would require approval from ALDOT. If we were accessing the site from County Road 99, that would require approval from the Highway Department. Is the proposed development, is the proposed amendment consistent with the development patterns in the area? So as mentioned earlier, the land uses surrounding the subject property are commercial and vacant. They would like to be rezoned to a higher intensity B4 to sell vehicles and portable buildings such as sheds on the property. And it's also located at a major intersection, but it's surrounded by B2 uses. So staff believes this proposed amendment is not consistent with the development patterns in the area. Skipping down to number 9, staff did note wetlands have been delineated on the site, and staff is concerned about the possible effects to the health, safety, and welfare of the county, and there's that potential for traffic congestion should a high-intensity B4 allowable use take place on the subject property. So going back to the wetlands, we would need a wetland delineation in order to verify there's no disturbance within a 30-foot wetland buffer if this were approved and if they plan to build at the time of zoning site plan review. These are the agency comments, and staff recommends denial of this request. However, staff would be more supportive of B3 zoning with commission site plan approval. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Anyone on the Planning Commission have any questions for staff? Has the applicant said whether they would be agreeable to a B3 or not agreeable to a B3?
They were very adamant on B4 during our pre-app meetings.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you. I had no one sign up. Is there someone to represent the applicant here? Okay. Do you wish to speak? Okay. Give us your name and address, please.
Alfred May.
Okay.
And I live in
Okay.
we bought property about a year ago. We sell fireworks currently. And there. We just have a plan for the property. That's what we're zoning. We probably built it. And my parents were actually okay, yeah. And helping us with that. Do I have to repeat? Do I need to repeat everything said?
You're okay. You're okay.
Okay, yeah. And that's kind of why we were looking to rezone it. So
Okay.
I guess that's all.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I do. Why wouldn't you entertain the idea of going to B3?
Well, it's something we could look at. I didn't. I'd have to look at what that is, what that'll allow, and everything. I don't think, if I remember correctly, it didn't seem like B3 allowed the automobiles and the portable buildings that we were looking at.
Okay.
Is that permitted under B3?
B3 is permitted with automobile sales.
Well, site plan approval, so it is.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. All right, I had no one else signed up. Any questions for staff? I'm going to close the public hearing then. Keep in mind this will be a recommendation to the county commission. So I'll entertain a motion as such.
I'll make a motion, we deny the rezoning request.
Okay. Mr. Davis made a motion that we deny this request, recommended to the county commission's denial. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Michael Mullick has seconded the motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. All right, at this time, we'll open the public hearing for case number Z22-22, McLendon property. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Okay.
Okay, this is a rezone request for Z2222 McLendon property. As you can see here, it's located in Planning District 26. The request before the Planning Commission is to rezone approximately 1.1 acres from RSF1 to RSF2. The subject property is located at the northwest corner of Scenic Highway 98 and Moogs Lane in Point Clear. The current use is vacant residential. Per the wetland delineation submitted by the applicant, the acreage is approximately 1.1 acres. The applicant is Kyle Ham, and the owner of the property is Sarah McLendon. The applicant's request is to be rezoned to subdivide the property. These are the locator map and the site map showing adjacent zoning of RSF1 and RSF2 to the north, south, and west. East of the subject property is zoned RA. Adjacent land uses are residential and vacant. These are the property images. These are the current zoning requirements for RSF1 and the proposed zoning requirements for RSF2. Is the requested change compatible with the existing development pattern and zoning of properties nearby? The subject property is zoned RSF1. Surrounding parcels in the immediate area are zoned RSF1 and RSF2 with adjacent uses being residential or vacant. And staff feels the requested change is compatible with the adjacent properties. In terms of any rezoning, the county zoning within this planning district came into effect in September of '93, and it appears the subject parcel was zoned RSF1 at the time zoning was adopted, and there have been no rezonings in the area since. A future land use designation of residential has been provided for the subject property. It conforms to the master plan and approval will result in no change to the future land use map. The subject property is located at the intersection of Scenic Highway 98 and Moogs Lane, which is a local road. Scenic Highway 98 is classified as a minor arterial. Staff does not believe this change will adversely affect traffic patterns or congestion in the area, and access to the site will be from Moogs Lane. Is the proposed amendment consistent with the development patterns in the area? So as mentioned earlier, the surrounding land uses are residential and vacant. They would like to be rezoned to RSF2 in order to subdivide the property. The development around the intersection of Moogs Lane and Scenic Highway 98 is low to medium residential density with vacant agricultural and vacant commercial across Scenic Highway 98. So staff believes the proposed amendment is consistent with the development patterns in the area. Other matters, the subject property does contain potential wetlands. There has been an update to your staff report, and a wetland delineation was conducted November 22nd and determined that the property consists of all uplands. These are the agency comments, and staff recommends approval. And with
Mr.
that,
Chairman,
Abby.
I would actually like to append one thing on this presentation, and I'm sorry, Corey, to put you on the spot, but the presentation does reference that the property would be accessed from Moogs Lane. However, that's just what the applicant submitted. The next step that this applicant will be required to take if a rezoning was approved and they do want to subdivide it would be to go through our subdivision process. And our subdivision process, and a representative from the highway department is here, but would require it requires all resulting lots to access a paved road that meets county standards, and Moogs Lane does not. So they would actually have to create lots that fronted US or Scenic 98. And so I just want to, that doesn't mean they couldn't access Moogs Lane, but they would be required to have access on Scenic 98 under our subdivision regulations, those lots.
Any questions for staff?
I have a question. Is there enough width to put two lots side by side and access 98?
The subject property is 1.1 acres, and if they were to subdivide the property, there would be enough room to put two lots.
And again,
No.
and I'm sorry, Corey, because I know you're being put on the spot with this right now. If the fronts are on 98, they would almost certainly be required to try to do it through a flag lot configuration, and I don't know the answer to whether or not that's achievable at this point.
Thank you.
Well, you're
Right.
not approving the subdivision, so that's one thing to note here. There's not a subdivision before y'all for approval today. I think maybe a good step would be to continue through with the public hearing, and then we can continue to discuss any concerns that come up, because these are good questions.
Right. Any other questions for staff? Okay, I have a few people signed up. I'm going to start with the applicant, Cal Ham. Good.
So I'm here for the zoning variance, but I haven't gone down the subdivision, and all this stuff that we're talking about is kind of new to me right now. So I need to process this. If I could, I would like to table this for the next meeting so I can get some more information and see how we proceed with this thing. That's okay with you guys.
Well, we'll hold the public hearing since we have several people here signed up, and that way you'll also hear, but it'll be up to the
Well, I
planning
know there's some
commission
complaints and all
to,
that, and that's fine, but I may make a decision anyways. If I have to enter through the main road, that may change everything.
okay.
So that really didn't come up in the zoning. It's more of a subdivision. And I have to apply for that, but we haven't gone down that road yet.
Okay.
So,
And so what I would suggest do is go ahead and hold the public hearing, and then since we're closer than 7 days out, if the planning commission decides that there's additional information they need, or we need some more answers, then they could make a motion as a commission to table
Right.
your application until a later day and try to figure out some of those answers if needed.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Jim Curry.
In light of the recent discussion just now, I'll make it pretty short. I'm representing the Point Clear Property Owners Association, which kind of oversees and kind of keeps up with zoning changes within District 26. And that organization is opposed to allowing this change in zoning. And I think that's all I need to say at this point.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, sir. Angela Pace.
I'm Angela Pace, and I'm at 5541 Moog Lane. Our property is adjacent to this lot that is being considered for rezoning. I mean, I don't know where to start, but I'll just give you 3 minutes of everything I want to say. First of all, flooding is a huge issue for us. Moog Lane is a public access, privately maintained road. And we have had numerous flooding problems. Our bulkheads have washed out. We've had sinkholes where trucks have fallen in the sinkholes on Moog Lane. And we begged the county to take over this road. We filled out an AFM. We had everybody in our contingent to our lot was aware of the problem. We all signed this AFM, and the county denied our request. So my husband and I and another couple, we paid for our whole road to be redone because the county would not do it. And so that is a point of contention for me because we already have all the trucks going up and down this road. It's flooding every time it rains. I have pictures of this lot yesterday, and it was underwater. Okay, so it is a problem. It is a problem for us in this neighborhood. Yes, that would be great. Okay, so then the next thing I want to say is I know that it was mentioned that that Moog Lane is off of Scenic Highway 98, but something that was not mentioned is that County Road 44 dumps into Scenic Highway 98, and that's a very well-traveled road off Twin Beach with all the neighborhoods that have been built. We've got walkers, we have runners, we have the Grand Hotel people, we have people up and down walking. We've had a biker hit on that lot. My husband was rear-ended trying to turn into Moog Lane. We've had multiple problems. We've had a bunch of car accidents, and y'all can pull that up. I don't know if y'all do that or if y'all can find a way to do that. But it's not a low-density, vehicular density area at all. Especially in the summer. It's very busy. You have people pulling boats and trailers, and I mean, the last thing we need are 2 more homes there. 1 home, sure, go for it, have at it. 2 homes, we don't know if these are gonna be renters. We share a driveway with these people. We have an easement, and I have this, you might wanna see this. This shows you the buildable space on this lot, which is not very much. Let's see, yeah, both of those. There's 2 there. There's not that much space to be built on there because of the setback from the easement and Moog Lane. There's 35 feet on either end and 10 on the other. Because I looked at buying this property to preserve our neighborhood, and they didn't sell it to me. So, I mean, I don't even want the property because I don't want to build on it. But we are trying to preserve the runoff and just, throwing houses up to sell them and then move on. That's not what this community is about. If it's a homeowner that's willing to going to live there. We don't know if these are going to be renters. We don't know if they're going to, they can't be very large homes. That's not what Point Clear is, okay? We're not going to just throw these homes up. This is a scenic area. It's a beautiful environment, and let's not ruin it. And then, let's see, I've got one more thing. Oh, we also sent out a petition, and we have 180 people that signed it that said this is not okay. I have the petition here that we sent out with all the signatures here. Let me see what else I need to say, because I know I have 3 minutes. I could keep going. Let's see. Oh, another thing, we bought this property in 2008, and in 2013, this property, about a third of this property was backfilled with topsoil. So okay, so it doesn't look like a wetland, but let me tell you, it was a frog pond. It wasn't this owner or the previous owner, but it was the one before that. They backfilled truckloads of dirt onto this property to cover a bog. So I'm telling you, it's wet. It's underwater when it rains. And we have storms, hurricanes. All we can do is preserve what we have. And please, don't do this. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for us. We try to preserve this for our future generations. And don't let some guy from out of town come here and build 2 houses. Just keep it like it is. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Questions?
Any questions?
I do. One.
Okay.
So at current, it's completely vacant, no house is on it.
Correct.
What is this that, with the residence and garage on that site plan, is that a proposed?
That was a proposed from Sally McClendon when she was considering putting a house there, but she said that she decided not to. That's why she's selling it. And she actually signed the AFM for the county when we were trying to get them to take that public access road over. She signed it because Moog Lane was not passable. You could not get down Moog Lane because there was a giant sinkhole. And so when they denied us, we had to fix it. And our bulkhead was completely washed out. And we had to repair the county bulkhead in the process because the fire hydrant is on the county side. So we have the hydrant there that we have to preserve. We have to have access to the hydrant. So there were so many factors that my husband and I decided we have to fix this, and we did. So please just listen to us this time. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Please. All right.
Alan Chasen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan Chasen. I'm at 15907 Scenic Highway 98 in Point Clear. I oppose this application because Point Clear is a low-density residential community. These rezonings to increase density is inconsistent with the overall nature of Point Clear. And we've tried to be consistent in opposing efforts to increase density by raising the zoning ordinance or by subdividing lots. The one thing that I want to point out to you, you're familiar with the current master plan that's being circulated. I've read that, believe it or not, and it's dry reading, but there's something in there that's relevant to this case. If you look at this is map 14, the future land use map of Point Clear area. If you'll notice, all of District 26, or substantially all of District 26, is green. And on the legend, there are 6 classifications of development in 6 different parts of the county. And this color-coded ranges from high density all the way down to ideal conservation and preservation, which is the dark green, the darker green. The lighter green is a conservation development potential. If you look at the definitions of each of those areas, they are either no density or very low density. These are at the opposite extreme of high density. As you know, there were public hearings, a lot of input, but this hadn't been adopted by the county commission yet. But there's been a lot of discussion about it, a lot of work that has gone into it. And I think it's entitled to some weight in a case like this, where you're talking about, is it appropriate to increase the density of a lot and turn one house site into two house sites? Which you might say, what's the big deal about one additional house? Well, you know that the way things work in the land use world, it's all about precedent. It's all about precedent. And this is a small battle that goes into the outcome of the war. And I think I speak for the vast majority of the residents of Point Clear. They're in Point Clear because they like the feel, the rural feel, the low density. We do not want increases in density, no matter what form it takes. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, that's the last I had signed up. Was there anyone else that did not sign up?
I do want to note that before the meeting, several emails and phone messages were passed out to all the commission meetings about people who had contacted the planning department about this case.
Yeah, we each have a copy of the many comments that were sent in, so we have those. Take your name and address, please.
Yeah. Good evening. I'm George Roberts. I live at 5592 Battles Road, also on the triangle that is immediately south of Moog Lane that is across the street from this piece of property. And I think most of the comments that I was going to make have already been made, so I won't bore you by repeating those same comments. But I would request that you make a recommendation to the county commissioners to deny this application. I am adamantly opposed to it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Ham, you're still here. I'm going to ask, before we move forward, you still want to request this be tabled? It's up to the planning commission to agree, but I'm going to let you. You'll have to come to the mic. I'm sorry.
The original idea was that I was going to buy this property, get it subdivided, sell off one of the lots, and keep one for myself. So I was planning to be a part of the community, but, you know, a lot of opposition there. But I'm not going to, this isn't going to be VRBO. We're going to do a nice house, and we're going to sell one and keep one. So that's where we were going with this.
All right.
Okay. I had no idea there was a meeting last night. There was such opposition, and I feel like I need time to address all these issues and talk to everybody about this. If we go forward, still got the other issues we got to do.
Okay.
So,
thank you, sir.
okay. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. Do any of you have any questions for staff? The option we have, we can move forward with making an up or down vote on it, or we can take consideration of the applicant's request for a table. So, what's your pleasure? Okay, so there's been a motion to, this is a recommendation to the county commission. So you're making a...
Just a quick reminder, commissioners, to turn on your microphones when you do speak, so that way it's caught on the video.
I make a motion to deny the rezoning request.
Okay. So, Mr. Tonsmeyer is making a recommendation to the county commission that we deny the request. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Fletcher has seconded the motion. Any questions or comments on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, given the willingness of the applicant to try to address what he wants to do, and given the importance of community input, particularly in the zoned areas that we try to encourage, not just on specific issues, but to broaden the input in various areas of the county with new zoning districts, I think it's important to recognize that, and I would hope that we could, in fact, reconsider the motion to actually table the issue until perhaps the two sides can discuss this. And from the planning district or the zoning district's point of view, if you're concerned about upzoning throughout the activities that go on, I would suggest that you consider what I'll call a technical amendment to your local zoning rules for the district as a way to, this is obviously underway, but that might benefit you down the line.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to deny the request and a second. Any other question or comments? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
All right, we're going to do a roll call vote.
Mr. Davis? No. Mr. Tonsmeyer? Mr. Mullick?
No.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Mr. Boer?
No.
Ms. Strediger?
No.
Ms. Teal?
No.
Mr. Fletcher?
Yes.
The motion to deny fails.
Okay, so I'll entertain another motion.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we table this issue subject to the rescheduling of it either next month or when it's appropriate, to give the parties an opportunity to try to work this out. I guess that's it.
We need to be more specific, counsel, on the length of time.
Well, you could do, I would say either pick January or February and table it until that meeting instead of a 60 or 30 days. So it'd either be at the January meeting.
I'm amenable to either.
Well, he may not actually be able to get back on the agenda by the January meeting just to the submittal deadline, so I would suggest, we'd shoot for the February meeting.
I would accept that.
All right, so we have a motion then to table this until the February meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Jamie? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Bill Booger has made the motion to table. Jamie Stradiger has seconded the motion. Any question or comments?
I have one question, and this is for staff. As these things come up, and Moog Lane is, I want to call it a point of contention or something that, I'm assuming that we as the county are, looking at what our needs are with some of these public accesses and different things as, is this something that we may not want anything to do or with Moog Lane, or is this, hopefully it's just a point that, carefully study these roads that might need our attention.
All right, so we have a motion to table the item. It's been seconded. No other discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposed. I think that was 2 opposed, so we're going to go with it. Motion's approved to table it till the February meeting. All right, we'll open public hearing at this time. Open public hearing for case number PUD 22-15 Grand River RV Park. Does anyone need to declare any prior communication on this item? All right, Ms. Mitchell?
Now, this is the one that was potentially tabled if no one is here.
I'm sorry?
This is the one we potentially will table due to the lacking document unless there's somebody who's here to hear it.
Yeah, did we have? Yeah, but I want to see. Do we have anybody signed up?
We do have Chris Lieb here.
One other than Chris?
No one other than Chris.
Okay. All right, so the applicant has requested this item be tabled just due to lack of some information that staff required. Was not able to get that in time, so, and there's no one here in opposition. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, so then we are going to open the public hearing, and so I'll let you go ahead and at least give us a brief run through.
All right, so this is a 142-unit RV park, and it is located in Plan District 13, and it is unzoned. The roads inside would remain private. They would not be accepted for maintenance. There has been a traffic study. There are recommended draining improvements. And this is a close-up. You can see it's divided into 3 different areas. And this is the missing element is a letter from Baldwin County Sewer at this point. So water is accounted for and electricity is accounted for. They are planning to extend the water main and install fire hydrants, so it would comply with ISO requirements. There are wetlands on the property along Styx River, but those are all protected by a 15-foot natural buffer and 30-foot wetland building setback. Drainage improvements would include a proposed detention pond. And because of the subdivision regulations, the road, it's on County Road 64 at the corner, I can't read, Lindholm Road. They would have to widen that to 24 feet to comply with regulations, and they are proposing to do that. And I put this in here to address some past questions that have come up. It does have 2 entrances, a main entrance and emergency entrance, and 3 dumpster locations that are highlighted in green. And we have a close-up of a typical lot in the lower right. Staff has recommended approval, but if it's going to be tabled. So in that case, strike the recommendation until that is voted on. But I just wanted to present that with the 2 conditions being the fire hydrants would be installed as proposed and the widening of the road.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Is Chris still here? Chris, do you want to speak? I know you're requesting it to be tabled at this time due to that bit of information, but do you want to speak to anything?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm just here to answer any questions you may have. It seems to be a pretty straightforward case besides some of the missing documentation. It's out of my control for getting that letter. They promised it to me, and they never got it to me. So they're still working through those issues, but it should be coming soon. So I'm requesting it to be tabled till the next meeting.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant's representative here?
I have one. From the aerial image, it looks like this is a completely wooded lot, and it's right on Styx River.
Correct.
Do you have a question, Michael, or you just?
No.
Okay. All right. All right. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Someone was here to speak, so I'll let you come up and speak. Give us your name and address.
Yes, sir. My name's Larry Toomey. My address is 11630 Miller Circle, Saraland, Alabama. I own property across the river on the south side of the river from where this planned development is supposed to be.
Okay.
My main concern is that the highway infrastructure there to support 142 RV space RV park is not adequate. Even with the 300-foot turn lanes on both sides and widening the road, you got 600 more feet down the Highway 64 bridge. You know, these RVers, they come in clubs, and it only takes 5 RVs to fill up that turn lane there. And on holidays, it would be a traffic nightmare for people to go up and down Highway 64 north and south. I would think a 4-lane highway would be better suited for this, such as a Highway 59 where you could have turn lanes on a 4-way lane and you'd have 1 lane wide open all the time in the north and southbound side. I looked at the sketches on this area, and this looked like a well-designed park. I'm a little bit concerned about the holding pond where the water runs off at what elevation it is so that we don't incur overflow from it when there's flooding down on Styx River, which you know that's very often now. Anything above a 22-foot elevation of the river, you know, it goes across Highway 64 there. So very concerned about that. I'm also concerned that this park, it's my understanding, and Chris may can answer this question. I understand they're going to actually rent tubes in this park as well. I'm concerned about the congestion on the river as well. I own another 9 acres, a mile and a half downriver from this, and I'm bordered by 2 RV parks now. So I know the traffic problems we have, the parking problems on the holidays like Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July. Like I said, this is a nice park. You know, I think they need to build it somewhere, but I don't think this is the area. They have 9,000 acres up and down between Highway 64 and I-10. I think a place where that there's adequate room, where they own both sides of the river, and there's very many places like that that they could be better suited for this. There's also some concerns about the animals in that area. And I didn't know until I actually looked it up today. I didn't know what you called a group of buzzards, or vultures. It's called a committee of vultures, and I didn't know that. However, that's only when they're resting. Now, when they're eating, they're called a wake, and I don't know if they associate this with a funeral, that the fact that that the animal is already dead, but I don't really want the wake of people that are associated with Bell Fountain Land Company being my neighbors, because I don't know. From my understanding, they're a group of wealthy businessmen. Their only concern is to make an almighty dollar and then moving on. And this is the concern I have. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, sir. That's all I had signed up. Anybody have any questions for this gentleman? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Same as before, but in this case, the applicant is missing a piece of information, and due to that is asking this be tabled. So I'll close the public hearing. I don't think I did that. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we table this case until the February meeting.
Okay. So if he gets the information and gets condemned by, he can still come in January. It's just no later than the February meeting.
I'll second that motion.
So Mr. Davis made a motion that we table this until no later than February. Mr. Davis, Mr. Mulligan second the motion. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, this time we'll open public hearing for case number S-17014 and SV-22-18, the Greystone RV Park. Ms. Mitchell? Oh, does anybody need to clear any prior communication on this item? Now, Ms. Mitchell.
So this is the request to continue a park that was approved initially in 2017. There are 88 proposed units, but they were not all completed. It's in Planning District 18, and that has not yet implemented zoning. As with all RV parks, the interior roads will all remain private and will not be maintained by the county. The traffic study, there was initially granted a waiver back in 2017, so there has not been a traffic study. There were recommended drainage improvements. And the utilities are important for this one. Water is provided by well, and sewer is septic. So this shows where it is. It's adjacent to the Baldwin Beach Express, or the Foley Beach Express. So this is a close-up. And this is the letter from the initial approval, or the notice in 2017, the July 6th hearing. And then these were the variances requested at that time. So They requested a crushed stone roadway rather than asphalt, and that was approved. The second variance was for a lot width of 36 feet, which would no longer be relevant to an RV park. And the third was to allow density of 9.8 acres or units per acre, which does exceed the required density when you have well and septic rather than sewer and public water. So again, these are the variances that were approved at the initial hearing. So, and this was, they requested from the Highway Department a waiver from the traffic study, Joe Nunley and Seth Peterson, and according to the letter that was part of the request process, they estimate RV parks generate 25% less traffic during the peak hours just because of the demographics of the people who tend to be in the RV parks. They're not going back and forth to work and to school. Wetland reports are not part of the review process in 2017, but I did check the potential wetland map, and there are none on the subject property. This is the proposed drainage improvements, and they do have a detention pond in that corner where it was initially approved or proposed. This is the current park. These are the lots that were built at. There are approximately 55 that were completed. This is the main permitted entrance, but there are two others that date back to at least 2004 from an earlier RV park. So there's a long history of a park at the site. They do have trash collection with waste management because, again, this has been an operating park, so that's already in place. The green, these are the completed lots where all the hookups, septic and whatnot have already been installed, and then the red, these are the ones that they would like to be able to finish. And then I have a couple other things. There are slight changes from the early site plan. Proposing a clubhouse. They're no longer building a bathhouse. They've moved the office from here to here and installed a mail kiosk. This is a timeline provided by the applicant, so I won't go through the whole thing, but just there are a series of things that led to the expiration of the, if you were to approve a PUD, you have a 2-year period in which to complete it. But back then, the process wasn't as clearly spelled out as far as the need for extensions. And the Grays, who are the owners, made it clear that they plan to do it in phases. And there's no evidence that the county responded that you have to do all those phases in a certain amount of time. But there's also not a request on their part for an extension. So, so that was just part of the timeline. There are several variances that they're requesting, and these are things that have changed the ways that the RV regulations differ from the way they used to be back when this was first approved. And again, this first one is for the 2-year. Normally, now, if we were to approve something and it expires, if they have not requested an extension, they have to start the process all over. And so they're requesting not to begin again, but basically to finish what was previously approved. The second I addressed briefly earlier, the maximum density is 6 units per acre if you don't have sewer and public water. They were granted a variance for this higher density back in 2017, and so they're requesting to be able to continue with that density. Third, we now require, as I mentioned in the earlier case, a 24-foot wide entrance within 300 feet. I mean, the road has to be widened, and they are requesting not to have to widen the road. Internal roads are now required to be asphalt or concrete. They were granted a variance for that in 2017. Current regulations require a 30-foot setback all the way around the perimeter. Back then, it was 25, and so they have 2 sides that are 25 and 2 that are 50. So 2 sides exceed the requirement and 2 are slightly less. Number 3, or the last variance request, is the number of parking. We require 1 per lot plus another, it's basically 1.25 times the number of requests, or the number of spaces. So they're short some of these additional spaces. But their lots, they say, are wide enough to have 2 cars per space. So if they were to park 2 per unit, they would still comply. So the staff recommends that the variance request be denied due to noncompliance. So this is on technical grounds because it does not comply with the current regulations. So if you were to deny the request to continue, they will record the site plan, and that also is not required in 2017. So if you deny it, then they would record that, and the 55 existing units or spaces will be allowed to continue to operate. They just will not be allowed to expand the park further without going through the process. But if we recognize that circumstances related to this development are atypical, and there have been several, actually 3 revisions to the subdivision regulations since this was initially approved. So if you were to approve the subdivision request, the variance request, they would be allowed to continue, but they would submit the amended site plan with the 88 sites and the alterations that I pointed out in the earlier slide with the mail kiosk and the office being moved. That would be recorded within 60 days of approval. And any further expansion beyond the 88, that would require them to submit a new PUD and go through the typical process.
Okay. Any questions for staff? So let me ask one.
Yes.
If there was quite a few items in here for the variance, what if we chose to grant some of the variances but not others? I guess it's going to be up to the applicant to say whether or not he's going to. I know he's here, so I'll give him the chance to answer that, but that is an option we have, I would think, to.
Yes, I believe so, that you could select those that you would approve, right?
There are some of these I don't necessarily have an issue with, but there's some of these we make every other applicant do.
Right.
I don't know that would be fair in this case, but I understand.
And let me go back to the variance page just to help you remember which ones are being requested. As far as this density, when they're pretty much at what we would currently allow due to the utilities.
Okay. Any other questions for staff by anyone? Okay. So I'll let Mr. Gray come up at this time. Give us your name and address.
Denny Gray, 20899 County Road 36, Summerdale, Alabama, 36580. Thank you, Commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm going to read this so I don't take up too much of your time. We're here requesting to allow to be continued building Greystone RV Park under the same regulations when the approval was originally granted. In proceeding with building the park, as is often the case, many things, most importantly in my case, unforeseen medical issues, did not allow us to meet our planned schedule, but we plugged on. Enter my health issues. I prepared a timeline which is in the application we filed. If you didn't get a chance to look at it, I've got copies if you need to. I think everyone here would agree that you don't get to total knee replacement or both knees all of a sudden. That's a long, long process. As hard as I pushed, my ability to sustain my self-imposed work level began to dissipate. August 15th, 2018, I had my first cortisone injection, and as hard as I tried to avoid it, ended up to having 2 new knees. No sooner did I get through with the knee surgeries and rehabilitation, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. I do not wish a Lupron shot on even my worst enemy, but that's what I had to have. In short, it throws a man into what they call menopause, which is exactly what it sounds like. And I was warned that the effects would last 18 to 24 months, which it did. Then add in 28 radiation treatments. Before the first knee surgery in June of 2019, I'd been working 12 to 14-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week. about 10 days after the Lupron shot, I began to drastically slow down, and for a year and a half, I literally did not have the stamina to work 2 hours a day. I could not even help my wife clean up the debris, which was a lot from Hurricane Sally. In sum, we have worked hard as we could every day to get the park completed. We've cleaned up that unsightly corner that was County Road 36 and the Baldwin Beach Express. We work hard to keep it neat, safe, and quiet, and we are rewarded with excellent reviews from our guests. Before my health issues came up, we were 2/3 finished with the completion of the park. We're requesting that we be allowed to continue under the same understanding that was in place when we started in 2017, when it was originally granted by this commission, grandfathered in, if you will. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. I had no one else sign up. Is there anyone that I missed? Okay. I'll close the public hearing. I will ask the Planning Commission, do you have any questions for staff?
I have one for staff. When we look at quote-unquote demographics for RV parks, do we delineate zone versus unzoned? Because these patterns for somewhere that's zoned is going to be different. Those are our, maybe more of our snowbirds, or winter guests, or summer vacationers, as in areas that are unzoned, this is more of a residential neighborhood, and that's why I ask about when you reference demographics and traffic patterns, and they don't travel at the same time. I'm asking, are we looking at demographics for zoned RV parks, which are not allowed to be, illegal to be neighborhoods? They can stay there for 4 months, if I'm correct. These unzoned areas where they can raise their families and reside in a travel trailer.
Now, to be honest, we don't really look at demographics. This was just based on their request for an exemption from the traffic study is what stated that. So that is a good point, though. You're right, that there is a difference in the use.
And we do have a representative from the Highway Department who could address that. I don't know if you want to quickly, Tyler.
I don't know if I can address it specifically for this case. It was a little before my time, but I will say when we get requests for RV parks and look at traffic, of course it depends on the unit count, but we also typically ask that traffic engineer, if a study is required, to go look at other RV parks that are very similar and take counts to see, what time are people leaving, how many trips are made in a day, and then dovetail that into their study to try to, project whatever kind of traffic they would see coming out of that proposed development. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Any comments?
When we vote, do we need to go item by item as far as the variances are concerned, or can we vote?
Well, that'll depend on who's making the motion. I'll leave it up to you. If you're agreeable with the variance as listed, you can make your motion that way. I don't think we'll take I'd rather whoever's making the motion decide if you're agreeable to those, and then the group can decide if there are items they're not, and then we'll break it from there. But let's start off. If someone wants to make a motion on the variance as a whole, let's do that.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we deny this application in toto and let these issues be worked out in a way that they can come back once they've been worked out, rather than piecemeal this together.
Okay, so you're making a motion that we deny the variance request and the
continuation.
Okay. All right.
Yes, that's
So Mr.
correct.
Boogers made the motion to deny. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is that Robert? All right, Mr. Davis made, seconded the motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposed. All right, motion carries. All right, we'll open the public hearing now for case number SC 22-41 and SV 22-17 Quail Spring subdivision. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Ms. Mitchell?
I'm sorry. Yes, this is a 3-lot subdivision, and it is in Planning District 1. And citizens have not implemented zoning here. The largest lots are 3 acres, and the smallest is 2. Traffic study is not required due to the number of lots, and there are no proposed streets. This is an overview of the entire thing, and here's a close-up. This one, they've requested a variance for a remnant parcel, which I will cover as well. So you can see it's north of Old Gainey Road and east of Highway 59. The drainage narrative, they have said there will be no detrimental effects to the downstream properties. There's no development proposed at this time. They're just requesting a subdivision. So this is just based on subdivision and no, as I said, no proposed building at this point. The wetlands, there are 2 pockets of non-jurisdictional wetlands that will be protected by a 5-foot buffer, and those have been indicated on the plat. And so for the variance request, as I mentioned, that is for the exclusion of a remnant parcel, and that is allowed if you have a parcel that is larger than 20 acres, and we have a statement that they put on the plat, and this is what the statement would read, that it was, that a request was, a variance was requested, and you can see they already have it on the draft version. They would fill in the approval date if this were to be approved. And one thing that looks confusing, it looks like this is actually 2 parcels. This is a section line, which automatically gives it 2 parcel numbers, but it operates as 1 parcel. As you can see, there's a driveway that continues across it. So, so the request is to subdivide this portion into 3 lots and to leave this as a remnant. So staff recommends approval in compliance with subdivision regulations, and the condition of approval is that the variance for the remnant parcel also be approved. And that's all.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to just chime in real briefly here. It might seem confusing because we have a variance request on this case and we had a variance request on the prior case. The variance request on this case is predicated on a specific section of the subdivision regulations that allows a variance for large remnant parcels. So I just want to keep that separate because otherwise it might feel like, you know, we're treating one differently than the other.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Thank you, ma'am. All right, I have Lawrence Griffith signed up to speak.
Good evening. My name is Lawrence Griffith. I live on Crimson Tide Drive. I own all the property abutting the north section of the proposed subdivision, lot 1, 2, and 3. Couple of issues I have. The first one is that the plat is drawn up wrong. It has 2 wetlands. The first wetland he's showing on the eastern part, on the eastern part of the lot 1, it actually is on the western end, and it encroaches on a piece of property owned by someone else, which moves it up directly north, or not directly, I'm directly north, it's directly south of my residence. And in rainy season, the wetland, I've seen it come all the way up to the property line, and it's within 130 feet of the foundation of my house. I have no objection to Mr. Catchall developing or selling the property. My concern is the development of the property. If someone comes in there and they decide they're just going to fill in that wetland, as you can imagine, where's the water going to go? It's already coming up to the property line during wet season, and if it's not developed properly, it could cause it to spill over onto my property. I know Mr. Catchall, he's a good man. I have no problem with him selling this property if that's what he wants to do, but I would like to have some idea of where I stand on trying to avoid my property becoming flooded from mismanagement of that piece of property. I've reached out to Austin Engineering twice in an email. I explained to him, I told him he could go to Google Earth. As you see on that print, it clearly shows that part of that wetland is on a piece of property to the west, and it's directly south of my house. He basically emailed me back the next day and told me that there was no wetland on my property, which I knew that because I've been there for 32 years. And I asked him to call me, and as of this time, he hasn't bothered to. So one problem is the plat being wrong, and the other is my concern about the wetland being developed, and if it's not developed properly, my property is standing a chance of getting flooded.
Okay. Is that it? Anybody have any questions for gentlemen? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no one else signed to speak one way or the other. Is anybody here that didn't sign up? Would you like to come and give us your name and address?
My name is Doug Ketchott. I'm the present owner at Old Gainey Road, 11543. As far as what the concerns of Mr. Griffin, I've hired an engineering firm, as he entered Austin, the engineer, land surveying. I also hired Barry Vitor, and what they've drawn up there is all I can tell you. I mean, I'm not trying to dispute Google Earth. I didn't know that was a legal document, but and like I say, I'm selling the property. I don't have any intentions of developing anything, so I'm saying that if whomever I may sell it to, if someone decides to do something, they got to go back through y'all again to do it. So I'm just trying to sell the property. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I'll close the public hearing then, and anybody have any questions, further questions for staff?
I have a question. We spoke about it in the work session. So does this make Lot 1 unbuildable?
So these are non-jurisdictional wetlands according to this wetland report. So if someone were to build on it, you can get permits to fill non-jurisdictional, but since that is a natural drainage, they have to replace that. They would have to make sure that is accounted for. And they would also have to go through a process. They need to get an unzoned land disturbance permit to do anything that would address issues like that. And this is a 2-acre lot. So that it looks small because we don't have this to scale, but when I did the measurements to see, like, this is an adequate, if you wanted to leave them intact, there is enough space, because again, this is a 2-acre lot. So it is technically a buildable lot, even with this amount of wetlands, and they're non-jurisdictional. And that's a very important distinction to remember, non-jurisdictional versus jurisdictional, as far as the things that you can do with that. And as they are now, they're protected by a 5-foot buffer. And I don't know if, Ashley, if you have anything you'd want to add.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I have one, it's just a point of clarification, I'm sorry to reiterate, but there are things we can do to actually build in these non-jurisdictional wetlands. I'm gonna say if there's any difference between zone or unzoned, but wetlands are free game, or we can work with buildings in these wetlands.
Yes, sir. With the appropriate permits, yes.
Okay. If no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the preliminary plat subject to compliance with the subdivision regulations.
Along with the variance request?
Yes, sir, along with the variance request.
Okay. Mr. Cyrus made a motion then that we approve the request of the case number SC 22-41 and the variance request SV 22-17. Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Mr. Boyer, second the motion. Any question or comments on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, we'll open the public hearing now for case number SC 22-48, Homestead Estates. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Ms. Booth?
Give me just a moment, please. On it. I can't get my slides up. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, so we need to back out of there, don't we? Here we go. It froze up for some reason. It did that with me last time. There we go.
I apologize for technical difficulties. This is for SC 22-48, Homestead Estates. It is located in Planning District 7. Before you is a request for a 5-lot subdivision, and staff is recommending approval with no deficiencies or conditions. It is currently unzoned, as previously stated, 5 lots. Excuse me. There was no traffic study triggered due to the unit count. Drainage improvements have been prepared by Benjamin White, Tensile Engineering. Wetlands, the applicant did not provide a wetland delineation, so they have invoked section 5.2.2 of the subdivision regulations and have displayed a 50-foot wetland building setback. Utility providers for waters, North Baldwin Utilities, sewers, on-site septic, and powers, Baldwin EMC. This is your plat and a close-up of the plat. And as you can see, there are, give me just a second here. The wetlands are identified right here on the plat for you. This is your vicinity map. This is your aerial map. The drainage narrative has been reviewed and accepted by Baldwin County Highway Department. The proposed division of property will not create significant change in drainage, will have no adverse impacts downstream, and will not need any additional drainage infrastructure. As previously stated, there are potential wetlands shown on the site. Although they did not do a wetland delineation, they did show the 50-foot wetland building setback. These are your utility letters. Staff does recommend approval for SC 22-48 for Homestead Estates be approved. As I said before, there are no conditions for approval. However, staff will grant administrative final plat approval, and then the final plat shall be circulated for signatures and recorded within 90 days of approval. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions for staff? All right. I'll call up at this time Ben White.
I'm just here, I'm an engineer, I'm just here to
Okay? Anybody have any questions for the engineer on this? Okay, I also have signed up Milton Head.
Good evening. Milton Head. I live at 36057 County Road 39, Stapleton. I own the property immediately south of this proposed subdivision. And all I was wanting to see if there was any, my concern was there any restrictions on the size housing going in this area, or is it just strictly a land sale? And there's two major water drainages that cross this property, one from Charlie Head Road and one from County Road 39. And they come, as they come together, the area that they're marking as wetlands is dry unless it's raining, because it drains across my property at that point. My biggest concern was there any restrictions on the size housing going into this area?
Yeah, I can tell you, we don't have any restriction. We're dealing strictly with land division. Now, whether the applicant, the developer, once he divides, if he puts any restrictions, that would be something he would put, but it's not something we would regulate.
Thank you.
Okay. I had no one else sign up. Was there someone I missed? Okay. I will close the public hearing. If no other, unless you have questions for staff, I'll entertain a motion.
Mary, one quick question. When we say that these subdivisions have to front on a existing paved road, how do we define fronting on it? How much distance does that require? The size of a driveway, place to put a mailbox? You know, how does that, what's the definition of fronting on a paved road?
As long as each lot is fronting on a paved road and they don't have access to another road, then that is the front of the lot.
No matter how much, no matter how the size of that frontage.
They do have to meet lot size requirements, though.
I understand that.
Yes.
So usually there is a minimum, you're talking about if you create a flag lot, the minimum width of the pole.
I'm thinking of a previous case and that when it comes to fronting on a paved road, well, if I can put my mailbox there, is that a front?
No, so that's a great question. And on an unzoned lot, generally that's going to be a minimum of 30 feet that we're going to require.
Okay, any other questions for staff? All right, want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for this case, SC 22-48 Homestead Estates.
All right, Mr. Mullins made a motion that we approve. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Mr. Cybert seconded the motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, at this time, we'll have public hearing on case number STA-22001. This is a text amendment to the Baldwin County subdivision regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to cruise through this. I do want to note it says it's prepared by Mr. King, and I have to thank him for that. I forgot to throw this together before I left on vacation, and he helped me out and got that taken care of, and DJ Hart, who got it on the agenda. So this is a simple subdivision regulation amendment to address some issues we've encountered with family subdivisions. So this will change Article 3 and 4 of the Baldwin County subdivision regulations pertaining to family subdivisions. Here are the quick overview of the changes. It'll revise the definition of a family division to designate legally related immediate family members to include an owner's spouse, parent, child, and or siblings, as well as a stepchild or adopted child of a property owner. This is based on an Attorney General opinion that stated this is what an immediate family was under this provision that allowed that. Require an affidavit executed by each proposed grantee certifying their relationship as an immediate family member to an owner/grantor. We discussed in the work session that sometimes we'll have folks come and propose a family subdivision with 10 or more lots. And It's not quite clear who these folks are that they're listing as family members, and this will just ensure that these are in fact family members who know they're being used to divide up this land. Requires a copy of some type of document proving that there is a family relationship. And then this is already required, but we took this opportunity to really highlight it. But it requires that the deed be recorded by an eligible recipient within 30 days of issuance of a subdivision exemption letter. And let me clarify that. To make an exempt subdivision come into being, you have to record a deed. Otherwise, it's just kind of floating out there as a possibility. Well, that means there are some exemption letters we've issued 10 years ago that are still floating out there. Well, regulations have changed, zonings may be coming to being, so they're not valid anymore. Well, this will help clarify that you have to take action within 30 days. Otherwise, that exemption letter is not valid anymore, just so that way folks aren't confused by that. This is a quick synopsis of those amendments as they exist. As you can see, there's just about 3 paragraphs total. We've already discussed the aim of the amendment, so I'm not going to waste any time on that. Here's a copy of the Attorney General opinion with that definition. And our recommendation is approval. And of course, this will go to the County Commission. It's currently advertising to go before them on Monday.
Okay, any questions for staff?
Matthew, are there any probate issues that may fall under that 30-day time period that would need to be addressed?
So we can't control what probate does when someone brings a deed to them, but we've actually in the past couple months actually improved our relationship there to make sure to encourage them to check and confirm there's a valid exemption or a valid subdivision in place before they accept the deed. And so now there's at least that chain of communication in place, because some people just unwittingly go and try and record a deed and don't realize that there's a process that's required for that.
Any other questions? Okay. Had no one signed up to speak? Was there someone that would like to speak to this that did not sign up? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. We'll entertain a motion. Remember, this is a recommendation to the County Commission.
Move that we make the recommendation brought forward by the staff to the County Commission.
Okay, Mr. Boogers made a motion to approve. Have a second? Mr. Davis seconded the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're going to open the public hearing now for case number S-20052, the Grove Phase 3 extension request. Does anybody need to declare any prior communication on this item? Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Planning Commissioners. And Mr. Chairman, this is an old business item, so it's not a public hearing. It's simply a matter for consideration by the Planning Commission. And what we have before you is the developers requesting a 1-year extension on Phase 3 of the Grove. Now, that was a 177-unit mobile home park that was originally approved November 5th of 2020. And we'll show you where that's located in Baldwin County. And what's significant here, Commissioners, is this is now in Planning District 35. At the time of its approval, it was unzoned. And so here, we want to show you the overall layout of the entire development and show you the various phases so you can see Phase 3, which is under consideration right now. Zoomed in a bit on Phase 3 under construction. Here, an aerial image so you can see the 3 phases. Zooming in a bit here so you can see the area under development for Phase 3. And zooming in a bit more on Phase 3 as well. And clarifying again, this is in Planning District 35. You see the property information there before you. Planning District 35 was adopted on October 18th of this year. And you see the zoning classification of it as now it is zoned, as you see the subject property marked out right there. That is now zoned RMH. And so this is the next few slides are primarily for your staff report. This is just showing the original approval staff report. And again, noting here that what was Planning District 34 is now Planning District 35, the original maps from the original approval. And so this is a provision within the subdivision regulations that allow an extension to be requested if they are within 30 calendar days of the date of expiration. And so this is a timely application because we're within that 30-day window from its expiration on the 5th of November of this year. Phase 3 is still under construction. The applicant can give more details about the construction process, which is still underway and not complete, if the Planning Commission has questions about it. And again, you see the section right there, the subdivision regulations, that allows an applicant to request up to 2 one-year extensions. And so a second and final extension could be requested within 30 days of December 1st of next year. And so staff is recommending approval. We do want to have some conditions in there just to memorialize that this approval of this extension, should it be approved, would expire at the time you see there on December 1st of next year. They would have until Monday, December 1st of 2024 to apply for their second allowable one-year extension if that was so desired. We just want to memorialize no improvements above and beyond those originally approved in the original case number, including but not limited to additional units above and beyond the 177 mobile home sites. Out of an abundance of caution, we like to memorialize those via approval sometimes, and also that any type of major change would have to come back before the Planning Commission, that they're merely extending their original approval, not altering the site. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Commissioners, happy to answer any questions from staff. And I'll put all the thumbnails back on screen if we need to go back to another slide.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay. So this is not a public hearing, so I will entertain a motion on the extension.
So moved.
Okay, Ms. Stratcher, you're making a motion to approve?
Yes.
All right. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All right. That was Mr. Seibert second the motion. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion's approved. All right, so we will open the public hearing now for case number CSP 22-23 and SP 22-19, the Wise property. Ms. Mitchell.
So this is Zone B4. It is south of Milton Jones Road and west of Highway 181. The northern portion of the parcel is the one that they want to develop, and that's 2.75 acres. It is currently Zone B4, and they desire to build a 10,000 square foot building for office warehouse use, and that's why they need a CSP. Here's the adjoining zoning. So you see it is residential on the western portion, so that will require a landscape buffer. Subject property. And again, this is permitted, and you would not normally need a CSP except for the fact that they're building something that is larger than 5,000 square feet and is adjacent to residential use. And this covers some basics that are required of office warehouses. They're required to add a facade. An office can take up no more than 25% of the building, and no more than 5 uses can be in that building. And this is the overall site plan and the site analysis. And this shows the facade that they're proposing. And this is the interior layout. And as you can see, the office does not take up more than 25%. I think it's actually 20%. And these are the 5 proposed uses. These are actually connected. So this is just one use with an office and then a connected storage area. And because there are multiple occupants, this does require a PUD, and so there are certain additional steps they have to take to comply with the PUD request. This is the proposed parking. This is one of the areas we did because they have multiple occupants. Normally, parking is assigned by building use. The office is over 2,000 square feet, so it would require normally 11 spaces, and the warehouse would normally require 8. And we did ask that they add one more to, again, accommodate since they will have multiple people using that. So this just shows the distribution of these parking spaces. This is the drainage plan. Here, this is the proposed building right here. And this area right here, I thought it was going to be the next slide, but this is a wetland area and a stream. And so they have that surrounded by buffers. And then they have a large detention area here. This is the proposed landscape plan. And again, because it's adjacent to residential, a 30-foot landscape buffer is required along that border. And then there's a 5-foot landscape buffer required around the parking lot. Because of Milton Jones classification, does not require a larger buffer along that road. And again, here's the wetland layout. And they did have, this property was subdivided in 2014, so they did a wetland delineation at that time. And so this is based on what they supplied for that. And then Ashley Campbell, our resource planner, went out and inspected the property for us as well. Here's some of the required permits, utility letters, agency comments. Because this is actually, Daphne is the one controlling the driveway permits and whatnot instead of Baldwin County, because Baldwin County does not maintain that portion of Milton Jones Road. Staff summary. So this is for the variance request, and this is from some of the PUD requirements. And again, because it's something, this is kind of a new thing, like a hybrid PUD CSP. There's some places where they overlap, and then some places where they don't. And so they're asking for variances from a PUD normally requires 5 acres unless it's an RV park and mobile home park. And so we're saying instead that they would comply with whatever the underlying zoning requires for the area. And so it does meet that. It only requires 20,000 square feet, and they have 2.75 acres. The second one, as I mentioned in the work session, normally the site plans would be recorded, but with the CSP, that's not the normal process, and so they're just asking for an exemption from that. And there are also certain things we would normally put on a PUD because it's recorded, things like all the certificates, so they would not do that. And so we recommend approval for the variance request. And then as far as the actual commission site plan, the subject property is properly zoned. It's adjacent to similar uses. And so we're asking commission site plan approval for the 10,000 square foot office warehouse building. And so we recommend approval with the following conditions. And I have it divided into specific conditions and then general. Specific relates to this particular property, that the variance request be approved, that the building not be divided beyond the 5 units they're requesting. And if they want to add any more, that they would have to go through the PUD process to add additional ones. And that any entities that occupy this building must comply with what is allowed in that zoning. Now, the second page, again, these are more of the standard conditions that we're memorializing these in slides now just to make sure that the applicants are aware that these are things that need to be done and have timelines. And so we don't run into this problem of people saying, oh, I didn't know, just if there's some lack of familiarity with the regulations. So again, these are the ones that are specific to this property.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
Just a quick reminder to go ahead and use your microphone because it's hard to hear without that.
Let me get back to this one. They do, in fact, that's why there's some of the mix up with the name. They own, Wise Property owns a couple of the ones over here, and they've had things that have been approved in recent months. So if that name's familiar, they do own a couple of the parcels over to the east.
Sean, what, on the condition number 3, all entities that occupy the building shall fit the uses permitted in B4. What's the enforcement mechanism for that?
So if they start utilizing it for a use other than that's allowed, usually we'll find out about it because it changes the intensity of the use. And then once we find out about it, we'll go and we'll issue a notice of violation, and they either have to pursue a rezoning or any number of different things to satisfy that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I know you had the earlier one about the building height, so I guess that would be addressed when the developer comes in.
Well, I'm going to call up, we have one signed up, David Lavery. You might want to come on up. There were a couple of questions we had in work session you may can address for us. I think it's more a point of clarification. give us your name again.
I'm David Lavery with SE Civil. I'm the engineer.
Okay. Mr. Strateger, I know you picked it, so you can ask the question.
On the slide in front of you, it talks about the maximum building height being 40 feet, but for B4, there's a maximum height of 35 feet. So are you asking for a variance there?
No, I don't believe our building is more than 40 feet in height. That would probably be an
error?
An error on our part. I will check into that, though.
We did notice on your elevation plan, it shows, I think, 23, 25 feet. I couldn't read it, but.
Okay.
So that's why we assumed there was a misprint on your notes.
I'll fix that in the plans.
Okay.
And then I had another question on, I realized that they're changing the use. So the letters from the utilities are dated 2018. Do you have anything more current?
We can request current letters.
And I don't know that those are normally part of the CSP process. I'm just, when I was doing the slides, I think like a subdivider, and so those are things we throw in there. So that's, like I said, it's more of a PUD thing than the CSP thing.
Any other questions for the engineer? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have no one else signed up. Is there someone that failed to sign up that'd like to speak? Okay. I'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for this commission site approval for Consolidated Acres on Milton Jones Road.
And
with the conditions laid out by staff.
Along with the variance request?
With the variance request.
You're making a motion to approve it also,
yes.
Right? Okay.
SV 22-19.
All right, so Mr. Mullock's made a motion to approve case number CSP 22-23 and SV 22-19, along with the staff's recommendations.
Seconded.
All right, Mr. Seibert seconded the motion. Any question or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those are approved. Okay, our last case number, we'll open public hearing for case number CSP 22-30, Little Point Clear. Does anybody need to clear any prior communication on this item? Mr. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. And Mr. Chairman, as we begin here, of course, we always like to show what part of the county a project is located. And so in this case, in Planning District 26, and you see the subject property marked right there. I'll begin with a very brief preamble, Commissioners. Understand this is a bit of an atypical situation, but make it very, very clear up front that staff is recommending approval of this commission site plan related to Little Point Clear. And what we're dealing with here is, you'll notice in the text right there on screen, this is the follow-up action required by a notice of action that this Planning Commission and staff submitted September 1st of this year. And so this is related to curing a series of deficiencies that were identified in a notice of violation issued March 2nd of this year. So a little bit atypical commission site plan, but this is the process prescribed by that notice of action. So we'll go through the typical review here, showing you the property information. Planning District 26, as we mentioned, this is zoned B2. And the various components. There's no roads proposed for maintenance by Baldwin County, for example. And what I'm showing you here and zooming in right here is basically what we spoke about earlier, but more specifically, you had a situation where one of the physical buildings on the site had some awnings and canopies that installed. That triggers a commission site plan process. So this is the fulfillment of curing that deficiency, is coming before the Planning Commission for a commission site plan to show the site plan, show what was added, and ask this commission's approval. And of course, subject property shown right here on our zoning map. And as we mentioned right here, B2 is your neighborhood business district zoning classification for the property. Have an aerial image here calling out the property as well. And then our subject property here, looking at the subject property, our street level photos. Now, this photo right here is showing the entrance to the property to the west. This is the only photo available from street level, and the adjoining property to the north, as well as property across the street. We have your full site plan here. The entire drawing will zoom in a bit. So the primary subject matter why we're here today are the canopies reflected on the site plan. That was required by the notice of action from earlier this year, as you see right there. We'll call those out here in lime green for you. And so again, site plan is memorializing what was installed. This slide basically summarizes what we've talked about. And as you see in that first bullet point right there, it memorializes that the previously installed canopy is added to the various property. Also, the requirement to go before the Architectural and Preservation Review Board also required, that trigger was required, or adding those canopies triggered that review by the ARB, and as you see, that approval was obtained on May 17th of this year. What we'll do here, Planning Commissioners, is this is the actual text of the notice of action taken from back in September. We'll just briefly just highlight a couple of things here. And so you're going to see this on the next slide. Parking spaces. We'll show a slide here in just a moment that basically this action is requiring that those parking spaces are shown on a site plan. This site plan shows that the parking bumpers and signage required is called out on this site plan. Another thing we'll call to the Planning Commissioner's attention, because I've had some questions about this from citizens, is that prior agreements, prior commitments were a little point clear. You see those dates right there where some of those parking spaces may be unavailable to allow the installation of tents. So you see those dates that were memorialized in that correspondence from September 1st. You notice there are a few more dates remaining in both this year and into next year. And what we'll show here, Planning Commissioners, is that on this same site plan that we saw earlier that shows the canopies, you notice the green areas are marking the 11 parking spaces. And so we'll zoom in on that area. We'll show them in light green right there. And again, you see the signage and the parking bumpers zoomed in right there. So those are the 11 permanent spaces that were required by the NOA dated September 1st, memorialized on this site plan that had to come before you anyway. And then finally, our last two pages of the NOA from the 1st of September, again, just to bring to the Planning Commission's attention, because this is a question I fielded, is that the increased intensity of the venue use will occur on the dates you see right there and the number of guests that you see right there. Otherwise, the intensity of this venue would be 125 guests and 10 staff members, as you see in the paragraph above. So we're just bringing this back to the public and the Planning Commission's attention. That was a component of that letter from September 1st. So therefore, the staff recommendation is that CSP 22-30 is approved with the following conditions. One is, again, putting into this approval memorializing the 11 parking spaces we talked about previously, and also noting that that may be altered on those days, concluding on June 10th of next year. Also further assuming that the signage and parking bumpers that we saw on the drawing are again in place, required by the notice of action on September 1st. As you see, typically we do this a lot on commission site plans. We're just simply memorializing here within the approval recommendation that any alteration to the site that might trigger it would have to come back before this Planning Commission for approval for triggering a new commission site plan. And also, I think very importantly, we're memorializing here in this action that all the remaining deficiencies identified in the notice of action taken September 1st are now cured. And then finally, a procedural thing for the benefit of staff, commissioners, is that upon approval of this action, if it's the pleasure of the commission to approve this, that case number you see before you, which is a code enforcement case, that would also be closed. And so with that, Planning Commissioners, I am happy to answer questions from staff, and we can go back and revisit any slides that you may wish to see again.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Mr. King. All right, I have three signed up. Walt Bolton. Okay. Just give us your name, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. My name is Tom O'Hara. I'm counsel for Little Point Clear. I've been appearing in front of the commission since 2017 on this very issue, and we've come a long way working with Bo and with Matthew on this case. I think we've got it all resolved, and we said that the last time we were here. The only exception Little Point Clear has is with condition 1 to the approval by the staff comments. And, you know, we're here really to get, like you said, the primary purpose is to get those awnings approved, which were approved by the Architectural Review Board. And now I have been recommended for approval by the staff. What condition 1 says is that those permanent parking spots, which are there and you've seen them on the site plan, need to be continuously available and unobstructed access. Okay, that is a fundamental change from the approval of the 2017 conditional use permit. I mean, that is the tail wagging the dog. We're here for the awning approval, but now continuous and unobstructed access to these 11 parking spots. In 2017, the board's attorney said the issue before you is whether these private hosting events out in that front area where people are mingling and there's cocktail tables and chairs is consistent with the use approved in 2015. And the hearing and the hearing transcript and the binder that I provided all members of the commission shows that this issue was put before the commission, and during those private hosting events, Little Point Clear would have off-site parking exclusively. In other words, no vehicle traffic through this area where the guests are mingling, primarily for safety reasons and to allow the guests to mingle. That was, there can be no dispute whatsoever that was the central issue before the commission, and that the commission in 2017 approved that. I don't want to repeat what was in the binder because it's all there in the transcript. Moreover, the applicable code section says that the spots need to be permanent. They are permanent. They've been marked out. They've been measured. They've been surveyed. They're there. They're only unavailable during these private hosting events for safety reasons, which is why the commission in 2017 said, you need to us proof of off-site parking. And we did that through 2 leases. And what we've done since that time is the LPC has purchased the property next door, the Ford property. And when we submitted the site approval, we included a survey of that property that showed the parking spots. But it was rejected, and it's not part of the staff approval because the staff wanted to focus on just the lot that LPC is on now. Didn't want to look at that Ford property. And I'll let Mr. Bolton address that issue. But we've made many concessions in order to resolve this dispute. Primarily, we've agreed to limit the functions to 135 people, and we've agreed to discontinue the use of tents. And I'll tell you this, in the transcript from 2017, a young lady got up in opposition and mentioned the use of tents out in the front as something that she objected to, okay? The 2017 commission didn't put a condition in there, no use of tents, even though they were aware of it. But we've agreed that that's not an issue anymore. We agreed not to use tents anymore. So we have made these concessions, and you know, what LPC has done is not an increase in the intensity of its use, because it was doing this in 2017 and before, these private hosting activities out front. What has happened is an increase in the frequency of the events. In other words, LPC has been a success, and it shouldn't be punished for that success. It's a small business in Little Point Clear that has the support of the community and the business leaders in the community. And in that binder, there's numerous letters from the business leaders of Point Clear saying that what LPC has done to that building that was dilapidated and falling down is nothing short of an asset to the community. That they've done a fantastic job there. And this is all started by one complaint. In the last 2 meetings, there's only one person who has been in opposition, and that's a disgruntled neighbor who admitted in the transcript in 2017 that he tried to buy this property, and LPC outbid him for the property. Okay, so don't punish the success of a small business like LPC because of a disgruntled neighbor who started this ball rolling that has an axe to grind. Thank you very much. I'd ask you to make a motion to approve the site plan with the exception of condition number 1, because that is a fundamental change, and unobstructed continuous access to these parking spots during these private hosting events, these private receptions, would be a death sentence for LPC. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, Commissioners. I'm Walt Bolton. I'm a professional engineer, licensed here in Alabama. I'll talk to you about the technical aspects very briefly. When I came on board at the last meeting, the issues were very clear to me, and we've addressed those issues with the staff. Lots of communication back and forth as far as the awnings and the parking. When I did the initial submission, I also submitted the existing Ford property. I think that's been there over 50 years. And as Tom indicated, the leases that were approved in 2017 were pertinent to that particular property, and the existing parking that was been there for 50 years plus on that property. I showed during an event if the front of the building needed to be utilized by Little Point Clear as a small business, those parking spaces could be available at the adjacent property. Now the staff, which was their discretion, they decided not to include that site plan as part of this process. However, all of the requirements for the county, the planning jurisdiction, the state of Alabama, all of those are met or exceeded with the site plan that we have proposed here tonight. So I'm here to answer any questions, technical information. I was there when the county came out and inspected the site and inspected the parking spaces, also inspected where the deck had been changed and cut back closer to the building. So, of course, I'm here to support the application and the approval.
Okay. I should have asked this before Mr. O'Hara sat down. Anybody have any questions for either one of the gentlemen that just spoke?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have one more. Art Dias.
Well, thank you. My name is Art Dias. I live at 18261 Scenic Highway 98, adjoining Little Point Clear, and I guess I'm the disgruntled neighbor. But I will say that I was going to come here tonight going to be real. Oh, you couldn't hear me?
I was going to come here tonight to be very neutral on this until I heard the recent lawyer come up here and spout off a bunch of erroneous information, to say the least. There's a couple things that I'd like to point out, and then I've really got just mostly questions. But the thing that I think is important to remember is the initial conditional use application for this piece of property was for 2 short-term apartments and a small meeting room for a total of 30 people and 11 on-site parking places. Where the approval came for the expansion of the use of this facility to something more than that, I don't know where it was. I don't believe this planning commission, and I'm not talking about you guys, but I don't think this planning commission ever gave approval to expand the use of this place to the degree that it has been expanded. Now, they talk about parking places. Yeah, okay, there were 11 parking places to be on site, but they never used them. Both owners of the property stipulated or said in previous meetings with you, they never used those for parking. But they were there. Well, I could say, well, there are parking places underneath the building too. But that doesn't mean that you can park on them. So they never used them for parking. They're blocked off right now where you cannot park in them. And one of the big problems for me, yes, I am disgruntled, but it's not just this. I don't call it disgruntled. I'm scared. I'm scared for myself, for my family, for my son and my daughter-in-law and all of my extended family, because you cannot see when they park in the right-of-way. There's a curve. For any of you that have been there, there's a curve to the north. People don't drive 35 miles an hour down Scenic Highway 98, but they park in the highway right-of-way. And when they do, there is no line of sight to the north. I probably have sent the planning department 50 pictures. I even took one this afternoon at 2:30 with a car parked in the right-of-way, right next to my driveway on their property, where I couldn't see to the curve. And I took a picture because there was a car coming around the other side. They've had trucks delivering tents, trucks delivering these 10-wheel trucks, and they park there. And there's just absolutely no way. I've had people leave my house, my driveway, and have to go in the ditch on the other side because they could not see up that line of sight. So, with all that said, that's the issue. That's the real issue. Parking is an issue now, and the question, I guess, if they've got spaces, are they going to start using this for 125, 150 people, including vendors and staff? Where I know they bought the Mike Ford property on the north side, but unless they cut every tree down and tear the 2 buildings down, then what's the number of parking places they've got to have? Now, also, according to the county's zoning regulations, a business use adjoining a residential use has got to have 25 feet of a buffer, a landscape buffer between those 2 properties. Well, Little Point Clear is already there, the facility itself, but on the Mike Ford property, that 25 feet adjoins my family's property also. That's my mother's property, and then my driveway comes around the back side. But one of the questions I've got, so when do they have to put enough parking to accommodate those 150 people? That's a question. That's a question. And so when I mean, is there a time frame? Because it's obvious that they really, what they tell you they're going to do and what they do, which leads to the next question, when they don't do what you tell them to do, what is the recourse? I don't want to have to call the police every time they've got my line of sight blocked off. Right next door to me, in an even worse position, is Government Street Presbyterian Church. That's Baytreat, for those of you that are not familiar with it. They have people coming in there big bunches. That place sleeps 40 people. Well, their driveway comes out right adjacent to mine. If you remember the picture you looked at, they said that was my drive. That was the other driveway right there. Well, they've got the same situation. So the question then is, when they don't do what they say they're going to do, what are you going to tell me I need to do? I really need to know that. And let's see. In a nutshell, that's it. But it's just, it's not an issue about whether there is, Little Point Clear is a pretty place. I said that back many moons ago. It is. It's a pretty place. They've done a good job with it, but they have not adhered to the regulations, the zoning regulations for the county. They've not done it. They have done, there's still things, I don't even want to talk about them now. But there are things that are there that they expanded the use of the building. You can't expand a non-conforming use, but they did. And it's right up on my property line now. But I can put a fence up and block that off. But the point is, they've just not done what they said they were going to do. It's a great facility, but the parking that was required has never been used before anyway. So what I would just ask you is, help me out. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to deal with it. And I will tell you, it's your call. It's your responsibility. And with that, that's all I've got. And if you got any questions, I'd be happy to answer. The last thing I would say is thank you very much for your service on this commission. It's a thankless job, to say the least.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Dice? Thank you, sir. Mr. Littleton, I skipped over you a while ago. I apologize. I probably should have let you come up first.
I'm Rob Littleton. I live at 302 Poplar Place, Fairhope, Alabama. Me and my wife own Little Point Clear. Back in the early summer, when all this started, I did a record search on parking violations. And I requested any violations in the county from 2015 to the present for any and all businesses with failure to permanently and exclusively reserve required parking places for temporary storage of vehicles. Any cause of action resulting from the violations from 2015 to the present, failure to reserve permanently parking places with the county. This was their research result. File E1820, a violation for a carport setback. A variance was applied for and denied. The structure was removed. File 2109309, which is us, is a violation for parking that has not yet been resolved. Yet, there's no other violations we can find. So I'm going to tell y'all that this is an historical night. We are the first ones that's ever been had an NOV for failure to reserve temporary permanent parking place for temporary vehicles. And that's our main objection. All righty? We're the only ones in Baldwin. This is the first one to ever be here. All right, then I also made a requirement. I asked for all county permits for awnings and canopies, 2015 to the present, all county violations for failure to apply for land use for awnings permits, 2015 to now, present, any cause of action resulting from violations for unapproved awnings or canopies to the present. There's none. I also did a request for I'm requesting record search for awnings, canopies in the county records, any and all permits for awnings, any and all land use certificates for awnings, any definition, any code, any uses, any requirements, any descriptions of awnings in the county zone, what kind of permits are required for awnings. And what I got back, Mr. Buford said, well, we just, there's none. There's none. And what we did And we thought doing this would solve all these issues. We paid a lot of money. We paid over $1 million an acre for Little Point Clear. We paid over $1 million an acre for the Ford property. And we thought that buying the Ford property would, and then I own the other property, the other place we park cars. And what we submitted was we got 9 parking places in front of Little Point Clear, and everybody realized that we don't want to park there. We don't have a backyard. We don't have a side yard. We barely have a front yard. Somebody built this building in there, and it's on 0.23 of an acres, and it's small. So it's the only place we have for guests to walk through, to come in. We'll put tables there. We'll put, cornhole, little kids that play cornhole, and things like that. And we park everybody, what you would consider off-site. We park them next door at the Ford property, which, I parked 47 cars there to answer Art's question. I have parked 47 cars. I do all the parking. I parked 47 cars there before. Now, they're all parked behind the other, but we can easily park 30 cars there. And then down the road at Sweetwater on another lot on a private street that I can park over 50 cars. Now, I've never filled all this up. We got more parking than we need. Okay. Mr. Dice, now I'm going back talking about Mr. Dice. He says we have expanded Little Point Clear. We can't expand Little Point Clear. There's no place there. City of Fairhope wouldn't have let us expand it at all. So none of the structure for Little Point Clear has been enlarged. He said we had a tent today. We had a truck there with a tent today. No, we did not. My staff was there all day. There's no tent got delivered today. We don't have a tent this weekend. He said he took a picture of a car parking in front of Little Point Clear. It's a problem. I also took a picture of a truck today pulling a trailer. Don't know who he was. He just pulls up in the gravel. I wish somebody had never put all that gravel. I wish they'd never filled the ditch, but I can't help that. This is what somebody did before me. So who Art took a picture of was just somebody else. I took a picture of somebody today. It's on my phone. Bay Treat, we know Bay Treat. Bay Treat has no complaints with Little Point Clear. In fact, they have events there, and they have people come there and stay, but they have had a complaint about Art. I built Hart's house a long time ago, and I know when you talk about somebody's words and somebody not doing what they say they're going to do, I know all that firsthand. We really thought we had all this solved. And I don't know why we have to park a car in front of Little Point Clear. They're there, the spaces are there, why we have to park 9 cars right there when, from here to that table, 9 parking places that have been there for 50 years. And that's this is I'm doing this for my grandchildren's college education. And it's my wife's idea. It's been very good. We have a lot of support.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Any questions for Mr. Littleton?
And I do all the parking. You got a question now. I'm the one that gets the cars in every time we have an event.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And we're putting the bumpers in over there.
All right, Mr. King, there were several things brought up. I don't know how much of that you can address for us, and I've made some notes, so we'll see what you got.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think probably the best guidance I can give at this point is that we need to stay on topic with why we're here and what is before the Planning Commission for approval. I certainly understand and respect some of the additional supplemental information that goes along with this. But we're here today as a follow-up to that letter right there that was sent to the developer on September 1st of this year. And just to reiterate very briefly, this is the actual letter. And so you see the parking diagram that was sent on September 1st. And so I'm going to try to explain a couple things, try to be as brief as possible. There was some discussion during the public hearing about an additional site plan that staff didn't want to look at. I did not want to put this in this slideshow and go and get there and get into that with this Planning Commission because it's not relevant. But since it's been discussed, I want to make certain we're very clear. Yes, sir. and yes, ma'am, and all members of the Planning Commission, we did receive an alternate site plan through this evaluation process that showed an improved parking facility on what we'll refer to as the Ford property north of here. And the reason we did not review that is because that is an entirely new and entirely different application. That application will have to have drainage calculations, drainage improvements, landscape buffers, a turnout permit reviewed and approved by the Baldwin County Highway Department onto County Road 98, Scenic Highway 98. And though we certainly are happy to review that at an appropriate time as a future project, absolutely, submit it to us. We'll review it and bring it back to this Planning Commission. That's not the subject of what we are here today. Our subject is what is on screen right here. And so I hope that explains that in a bit greater detail. And I'll go here back to our staff recommendation. So essentially, this staff recommendation and these conditions of approval, again, are memorializing the things that staff believes is necessary for, in terms of staff, in terms of the Planning Commission, to make certain that it's crystal clear the expectations going forward if this is approved by the Planning Commission and all of these otherwise uncured deficiencies are now cured. We have a site plan in front of you that has everything that's been asked for in the September 1st letter, that it was a byproduct of the March 2nd notice of violation. So I hope that was succinct, Planning Commissioners, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, for further questions.
So just to be clear, that notice of action on September 1st included the language of unobstructed access.
So, Mr. Chairman, that exact word is not in there. But when I was preparing the staff report to make certain that a parking space is a bona fide parking space, I felt that was appropriate wording to include in this staff recommendation. Certainly, this commission can alter that if they think it's appropriate to do so.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just say that it's certainly not the intent, I don't think, Buford, correct me if I'm wrong, for this first point to expand what y'all previously approved on September 1st. And so I actually think it would be a good idea to modify that to make it clear that this is only memorializing, as Buford likes to say, the notice of action from September 1st, and you can strike all other language there. If that's a concern, and I think that's a valid concern. If anybody feels like this is a modification of that, it's not intended to be.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you strike unobstructed, then it matches the notice of action from September 1st.
Well, I think what we need to be careful here is I would strike, we could strike that whole first thing and just someone say the notice of action of September 1st, 2022 is in effect.
Okay.
I have a question. On slide or page 182, if we're approving a site plan, and it kind of zooms into the 11 permanent parking spaces, the detail says removable parking signs and removable bumpers. So that doesn't indicate permanent. And I think those should match whichever way we're going.
And Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners, so what we're doing here, and again, that's why we have these public hearings. That's why we have public hearings. That's why one person doesn't make these decisions. But basically what that's for is that is recognizing that the notice of action from September 1st does allow them to alter those parking arrangements on those dates specified. And so therefore those features can be removed and moved out of the way to allow those tents to be installed on those particular dates. And so that is the reason why that wording is there and reflected on the site plan.
Thank you for clearing it.
All right, any questions? Other questions for staff?
So, Mr. King, so are we to assume that those parking spaces are going to become permanent at the conclusion or the end of that last date that we're allowing them to be removed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Those are the dates where they are allowed. Those are the dates where they are allowed to make that parking alteration. All other dates will be.
So a parking alteration after that last date would then, I assume, trigger another notice of violation?
Yes, sir, it would. I certainly hope we don't find ourselves in that situation.
I do too, but
technically, yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Unless you have questions for staff, I'll entertain a motion.
So
we'll take it away, Matthew.
Okay. We understood. Just for the record of folks watching, if anybody's watching by video, there was a question from the audience about why the tent, as I understood it, is and the excess occupancy is permitted for certain dates. And this is a recognition that there were likely agreements entered into by this owner with citizens or folks who want to use this facility, and in coordinating with their legal counsel, we agreed that it would be reasonable to allow them to honor those pre-existing agreements, and then from that point on they would need to comply. And so we specified those specific dates that they provided to us where they had pre-existing agreements.
Thank you, Matthew.
I think he needs to come to the microphone.
If you're going to speak, you're going to have to come up to the microphone, because, yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, procedurally, are you reopening the public hearing?
Yes, sir. For one speaker.
Thank you, sir.
Give us your name, please.
Mike Dorgan, at 4 Malaga Circle, Spanish Fort. My involvement in this is obviously my own hands went to working on that place and the remodeling and so forth. I don't know zoning. I just know effort and so forth that was put in. And my question is, and I support it if it was all this about safety? The view that Mr. Diaz is up here screaming, can't see? Is that what is driving this?
No, we're talking about something entirely different. We're talking about parking spots.
Awning.
I think Mr. King is going back to the original reason we're here tonight. So.
Okay, cars and awnings, is my understanding, is it driven because of view, visibility? That's the only thing I've heard mentioned.
It's driven by a previous agreement that we've had meetings on, and we have struck this agreement with the applicant that this is, and they are honoring that by bringing this back to us tonight.
Okay.
So this has been something that's been talked about and been agreed to prior to tonight. So
I've made 4 trips down here. I'm just trying to understand what's driving it. The last thing I want to say is in regard to Mr. Diaz, today he just mentioned he took a picture of a car. That was me. And the reason I was there is because they had trees being removed from the Ford property. He had an 18-wheeler stopped in the street. And I got out and I helped direct traffic. I walked over to the edge of his driveway so I could see myself for the first time. And I'm telling you, it is clearer than it's ever been before, and it should not be an issue. Okay. I appreciate your time.
All right, closing the public hearing now for sure. All right, any other questions for staff? Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve this subject to the modifications that have been made to item number 1 by the staff, the words that have been stricken.
All right, Mr. Boogers made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Seibert seconded the motion. Any question, comments on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One question from staff regarding this. As it was stated, they are parking on this additional property. Are we expecting a site plan to approve that? It seems to go to a previous comment about a violation. I mean, it's a zoned area. If parking's being used on a property that's not been approved for that yet, are we expecting a site plan?
So, Mr. Chairman, you have the situation where, to try to keep this as streamlined as possible, we didn't debate the fact that the parking agreements that were previously entered into on that property, we didn't debate that they had an agreement with that property owner to be able to park on there to meet the needs of the site. Now, and I see no reason why that can't continue even as an owner. But again, we get ourselves into the basic provisions of zoning in zoned areas. When someone wants and desires to make improvements to a piece of property, all of the normal procedures would kick in. So if there's an endeavor to build an improved parking space on that northern property, the Ford property, yes, sir, we would expect a commission site plan to come through, following all the normal procedures, very likely coming back to this planning commission for approval.
Okay. All right. We have public comments. We have one person signed up, Joe Godwin. Is he still here? Apparently not. Okay. We'll do reports at this time, staff reports.
I have two things for the Planning Commission. Tentatively, and I'll send out a calendar invite probably this evening, that joint work session regarding the master plan, it looks like it's going to be set for 10 a.m. on the 15th. 10 a.m. on the 15th in this room.
In this room?
In this room. And we will probably be reaching, most of you have already confirmed. If you cannot make 10 a.m. on the 15th, please let us know. And then we should have a final confirmation early next week that that is definitely going to move forward.
Okay.
The second thing, you may remember the Sherwood case. We did receive a judgment in that case reversing the Planning Commission's denial, and that resulted in us just automatically reversing that our approval in that case, and so that project is moving forward as an approved preliminary plat.
No action required on our part.
No action required from the Planning Commission.
Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you. I can't thank you again for your service. This was, I felt like, a good meeting. We had a lot of cases. Y'all asked great questions, and we really appreciate the time that you commit to this. Thank you.
And
Matthew, has there been any further discussion with regards to Sherwood regarding the need for a public hearing on a technical review of a subdivision application? Back to the idea that why do we listen to 200 people if it's technically correct and we're going to have to say yes anyway?
So there's definitely been discussion about that because it is. I
mean, if it's a legal requirement, I get it, but
right. Because then you ask yourself this situation: do we not want to give them a public hearing?
No, I just think you start the public hearing with say what you want to, but it's technically correct, so we're going to have to say yes or get taken to court.
I think if anything, what we do a better job of, we created that video, and if we have a really controversial case like that, we'll probably open up the meeting with that video to help make sure folks know how your hands are tied in that situation if an applicant has met the technical requirements of a subdivision regulation. And we're going to take that burden on as staff, and I know sometimes you all feel like you all have the bullseye on you, and I apologize for that. We can do better, and we're going to.
It's not a matter of that. It's just like I've said on multiple occasions. It creates a false pretense for.
I think the importance of the public hearing is when they have questions and we're able to answer those questions, not so much to change our opinion on something. Sometimes they come just not knowing answers, not realizing staff has done the engineering review or will be doing it, so we can address those kind of concerns in a meeting. But
may I say something related to this? I think another advantage of the public hearing is there might be something we don't know about. Like a neighbor might say, well, this particular thing happened, and you would only hear about in the course of that hearing. And another thing, like just using a recent example, the Underhill RV, is that the name? Underwood RV Park. Last month, when you tabled it, we had all the questions, we received a revised one that took a lot of those comments into account. And so that's another possibility, is that rather than denying it, to table and say, these are our concerns, please address that. So that's another thing, a benefit of the public hearing.
Yeah. Okay. Any other staff comments?
Mr. Chairman, with Matthew's permission, there's a possible training event we may want to advise the Planning Commission about.
Okay.
Are we talking about the CAPSO event?
CAPSO.
There's a chance there'll be a live CAPSO event. That's, can't remember what that acronym stands for, but it's a planning and zoning official certification. And we will be in touch with you all soon on that. Many of you have already sat through that, but it'll be live in Bay Minette, and so we'd love for you to go if you can make it, but we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Possibly on the 12th and 13th of January, but that is still very tentative at this time. Many of y'all know Claire Duro, the city planner for City of Bay Minette. She is working on that right now.
Okay. Legal counsel?
I will be doing some training for planning and zoning department on December 15th that night, and I'll also be here for the joint session that we have during the morning of December 15th, probably with Brad Hicks to help with any questions that we may be able to provide from the legal department side. So,
okay. Excellent.
It's going to be a busy December.
Sounds like it. Okay. Our next meeting will be January the 5th. Since we won't see you then, Merry Christmas to all of you. Thank you, staff, legal counsel, for all that you do, and we appreciate y'all and keeping us on track. And we are adjourned.